Hello fellow nerds of the internet, and welcome back to my channel. Now for those of you that have read my community tab, you'll know that I'm making a review of Sonic Prime. And I'm still working on it. I'm just a bit lazy and I haven't really been watching any shows as of late, besides trying to rewatch Tales from the Loop, which again is a really great show if you haven't seen it. But I will get back to that at some point, probably when the creator releases in theaters or when the Electric State comes out on Netflix, which by the way, will have Eleven from Stranger Things star as the main character. But besides that, let's get into this new bone lab theory that's been sitting in my mind for a while, mainly because it was the only theory with pretty straightforward evidence to back it up, which is a miracle when it comes to Stress Level Zero storytelling. Maybe not Duck Season since they need that to be the setup for Boneworks in their future games though. So the theory we are discussing is whether music or sound can control the void. And to understand this, I need to explain where I got this idea from, and it was mainly from 2 points in the game. So the first point of interest is actually towards the end of the game where Jimmy tells us that this song is a road and without it, we're just going in circles. And this statement alone alludes to the void's nature of being unbound by space and time, and how things can repeat themselves. In fact, in that very taxi drive, you can hear repeated parts of dialogue that you hear throughout the game whenever your player or pal stumbles onto a radio, which is a whole other thing that I'll explain later. But the main takeaway is that the song that plays in the taxi is called Don't Fence Me In, and Jimmy describes it as an old classic, which implies to me at least that there are more songs that are capable of altering the void or referencing its nature. And this can be seen somewhat in Boneworks. Now, I've never played the game, but from all the playthroughs, story breakdowns I've seen, along with the game's OST, the Bone theme seems to be the biggest piece of supporting evidence to this theory, because it plays in almost all the songs as a leitmotif. And one important theme that is shared between Duck Season, Boneworks, and Bone Lab is the idea of looping through time. This can be seen in Duck Season with the recursion bubble, with each ending of the game being canon, because in the canon ending, the mom dies, David kills the dog and runs away, but we see the cat Block 9 in Boneworks and Bone Lab, which shouldn't be possible in the canon ending because we never go backstage to unlock the door to Dead FM. But how Boneworks supports the theory is with the Bone theme's leitmotif that constantly repeats in the other songs in the Bone Tones OST. I know it's not something as direct as what was shown in Bone Lab, and the evidence is more symbolic when comparing them, but it is the most apparent when looking at it. I mean, we constantly read messages made by our past selves to help us get to the void, so it's not crazy to see some of those same ideas in the music as well. But besides that, this is where Boneworks' relevance to the theory starts to drizzle out, because Bone Lab has better examples and more or less confirmation that my theory is right. So towards the beginning of the video, I was talking about this one line of dialogue that Jimmy says during a taxi ride about the song being the road and without it we're just going in circles, and this could possibly shed some light on why Jimmy uses a radio station to call others to join the Lava Gang, and this could be because of the voice relationship with sound and music. One strong point that supports this theory is in the beginning of the game when we hear Jimmy's voice with the radio sound, but we don't see a radio present. And the radio could just simply not be seen from our view from an in-game asset perspective, but the game is pretty consistent when Jimmy's voice is heard through a radio. So the fact that we hear his voice and we don't see a radio present is strong evidence of the void being altered by sound, since all other times that we hear Jimmy's voice, some form of technology is used to communicate to the player, like the radio in the elevator. And one piece of evidence that may not be directly related to sound or music, but it does show Jimmy's connection to the void since he's able to do things like make a knife and a key appear in order for us to progress the level, and change our avatars at will when we need to complete the level. Speaking of which, I have a little mini theory about the avatar stats as I was writing the script. So I believe before you stare down the hallway in Big Anomaly, there's a plate that talks about all the avatar stats except intelligence. And we know Monogon's headsets are directly connecting people's minds to the void, so logic would infer that intelligence would raise one's awareness of the void by pumping more of that energy into their mind. Or maybe it's trying to make fun of the intelligence stat in video games, but since this is Stress Level 0, I wouldn't put it past them if this wasn't true. And you can kinda see what I'm talking about when Ford goes to Fantasyland, where all the other Ford clones are dumb since it's assumed that their consciousness made it to the void and became immortal. Therefore, their minds have no intelligence. I don't know why King Ford is the exception to this, Of course, the straightforward answer would be that he didn't enter the void, and actually might have been the one that made all those warnings near the void plug, since Fantasyland is directly made from void energy, just like Duck Season. But I think it would be interesting if King 4 did go to the void and is just doing what Jimmy did in Big Anomaly and just casting a projection of himself. But I think the intelligence stat was scrubbed because Monogon saw how dangerous it is. And my main piece of supporting evidence is actually at the end of Boneworks, where we see a man's head who's censored that ends up shooting Ford's body. Now I know that some of you are going to say that, oh, his face was censored because he's going to be relevant in future games. And that may be true, but when I saw the cutscene, the blur looked more purple than black. But even if that's not the case, the important detail is that he waves to the void entities, implying that he can see them, even though all the other Saber-like agents around him pay no attention to it. And this is important because in an early plot synopsis of Hall of the Machine King, it talks about how the Voidway is a possible cause for the machine's sentience and eventual uprising. And Saber-like is Monogon's security company, so it could have been possible that Avatar Intelligence posed a security risk. So to test it, Monogon had a Saber-like official use a Monogon headset to test Avatar Intelligence, and now this person has awareness of the Void in the real world. And that would explain why the plate for Avatar Intelligence is not displayed in the museum, because if the key to higher Avatar Intelligence was public knowledge, then Monogon would be having a truck ton of issues dealing with it. Anyway, back to the main theory. So earlier in the video I was talking about a second point to why music can alter the void, and that's because the evidence is in Mind Dive, and there's only 2 keycard rooms where it talks about this. And the first room is when you enter Mind Dive and you go find the card that has Michael W. And it leads into a secret room that reveals the plate's energy source. So for those of you that don't know or haven't played Bone Lab, as you play through the game, there are these giant instruction plates that are discarded as waste due to Monogon not approving them. One good example that I don't think was talked about on the clipboards was a fracture plate that was being held up in the center of an office at the start of the game, and parts of them are seen near a drain leaking void energy. So then the broken plates ended up leaking void energy and started making these metal spheres as a result. And on Michael W's clipboard it talks about how these weird spheres and the energy that creates them responds to sound and music. And that it feels alive, like a radiation penetrating through reality. And he said that he needed to do more tests on it. Now, I'm not sure about Michael W's relationship to Monogon compared to the other factions like the Lift Crew or Lava Gang, but considering that he never mentions his position in the company, or whether the higher-ups at Monogon or even Saber-like would be worried about void radiation leaking into their simulation, so I think it's safe to say that Michael is disconnected from Monogon to an extent because he still has the keycard. So this more or less confirms that music can alter the void, and since it seems like only one person in the game has figured this out, it could be possible that Michael W is related to the Lava Gang if this is the case, because there's another Mind Dive clipboard that goes into deeper detail about the metal sphere's creation rather than what they react to or their nature. So the keycard used to unlock this room is from Spencer S. And the clipboard reveals that there is a grand plate that caused these metal bubbles to form, and a new realm is born from it. And it said at the end of the message that the Banana Land dream is still on. So if you don't know, Banana Land is, at least from my research, the only amusement park in the void. And from early renders of Jimmy wearing the Banana Land shirt, this could have been around the time of early Boneworks creation due to Jimmy being the original model for Ford before getting switched out with the Ford that we know now. Although this is not really related to sound or music, it does show that the leaks are acting like these gateways between the Void and Myth the West that not even Monogon or Saber-Lake can handle. And this logically makes sense since everything that they make in Myth the West is related to the Void, and the only way they've been handling these Void leaks is just by containing them. Sure, you can destroy the constructs made by the Void like the NORADs and that sphere and pillar climb, but that doesn't get rid of the actual energy they are made of. But now that we have a solid foundation of reasoning for our theory, what could this mean for future games or updates? Well, I don't think this will completely change Bone Lab, but this might be an important part of Jimmy's character that might be seen in greater detail in future games or new updates. But anyway, that has been the theory. Please feel free to comment if there's anything that I got wrong or need to clear up. I would love to see what you agree about this theory and whether or not it could be true. Anyways, this is Static tuning out.